I never expected that my son's homework would change my life. But in 2005, he came home and told me he had to write a country report. What country, I asked. Rwanda. Where? Not Spain, Mexico, or Romania? Where is Rwanda? We looked at a map and we found one of Africa's smallest countries, landlocked between Burundi, Uganda, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Tanzania. As a neurotic Jewish mother, I felt I had to be involved. His report took me over continents and oceans for more than a decade. As he and his twin brother were also studying for their bar mitzvahs, with lessons of the Holocaust, one day he said to me, "You know, Mom, this Holocaust and the genocide, it's the same. Why do people keep doing this over and over again?" We had looked in Seattle for books, and we could only find one. And so I started helping him to research. By luck, I found a coffee shop in Seattle. Now, what's better for research than coffee? We made a date, and we went. And the owner of the coffee shop told us, "You have to meet Arthur." Now, why? So with one email, he replied, and he said, yes, he would help us, and he would fill in all the gaps. My son was able to finish his report with an A++, but I was far from done, even though he was done. This guided me on an adventure to go back to school, to finish my bachelor's, and to dig deeper into my own Jewish heritage. It was my crossroads, and there were beginning signs of connections. As the boys were finishing their studies for their bar mitzvah, we found out they also had to do a community service project. What would any parent say? Well, let's go to Rwanda. So I found out that, well, they needed to be 15 to trek the gorillas, and I was nervous about going to a developing country where I didn't speak the language with two 13-year-olds. I had never traveled like that before, so we decided to wait. In the meantime, I worked on my studies, emphasized on social justice and conservation. Then a year later, in 2006, I was able to make that trip for the first time with Arthur. And I watched him in the fields of the coffee farms with people, and I realized that what I was witnessing was a country that had been recently devastated by genocide, where it was so beautiful and so peaceful. It was quite amazing. And then I was given a permit to go trek the mountain gorillas, and if you ever have a chance to do that, I recommend it. My journey in Rwanda, those 6 days ended with a trip to the Gisozi Genocide Memorial. There, I was followed by our driver, who we didn't think spoke any English. And from room to room, I learned so much. And then we got to the room dedicated to the genocides of the 20th century, and I saw images of the Holocaust. I looked at the driver, and I showed him the Star of David on my neck and the ones on the wall. And for the first time, he said to me, "So in Rwanda, you're a Tutsi." This gave me a very strange feeling of historic connection over time and distance and person to person. I left Rwanda the next day. I cried the whole way home, trying to imagine how I was going to get back to Rwanda. And like any heartsick lover, I pined to go back. And I was determined to take my kids so that they could see and understand what I was seeing. While I was there, I had also met and made some connections, and I hired a driver, Paul. He had decided that he would take us to Uganda to visit the Abu Daya community and our friend, Rabbi Aaron. The Abu Daya is a community of Jews in Uganda and the only Jewish community of African descent. So when I returned to Seattle in March, I decided to take a deep dive into the pool. I looked at my kids and I said, what do you think about not going to Rwanda for a month, but how about we go for 6 months? You don't go to school in Seattle for your first fall semester of high school, and we go from August to December. And without a lot of thought, they said, okay. My friends and family thought I had lost my mind. I was scared, and this was a kind of commitment I had never made to anything but being a mom before, so this was really new for me. So we emailed back and forth about our itinerary, housing, transportation, and our packing list. Paul suggested we bring everything to Rwanda because goods in Rwanda are often scarce and expensive. We left with 31 boxes. I also made a deal with the boys, and the deal was sort of a safety net for all of us. I said that if at the end of the trip they decided they didn't want to return to Seattle, or if they did want to return to Seattle, I wouldn't argue either way. One of my kids said to me as we were getting close to leaving, he says, you know, Mom, I'm kind of nervous about being the only white kid in class. And I said, you're already the only Jew. How is that different? And with that, he was kind of okay. So I believe that travel is a great connector and an amazing teacher, especially when you have an opportunity to live locally. While the boys were in school, I volunteered and worked on my photography. At the end of our trip, we had an incredible safari for 21 days. We drove out of Rwanda, through the Serengeti in Tanzania, up to Kenya and Uganda, where we were finally able to spend Shabbat with our friend Rabbi Aaron. It was truly a safari of a lifetime. But things had changed with Paul, and we had fallen in love with each other. So one of our last nights together in Rwanda, he took me to the restaurant called Heaven. After dessert, he surprised me and asked me to marry him. I said yes. So this promise meant, though, that I had to take the boys back to Seattle. And we decided, and I had to leave Paul behind, we decided that we would keep our engagement a secret, in part because we didn't want a funny rumor mill going around, and also we needed to secure his visa. Staying connected with Paul wasn't too hard. I was commuting back and forth, and we had also used a lot of email and a lot of Skype. We decided to open a business called Nhori Expeditions and Business Tours. We chose the word Nhori for a variety of reasons. One, Nhori dancers are unique to Rwanda. They were the dancers, entertainers, and warriors for the kings in ancient times. It was a word that people could say without being misunderstood, and it meant chosen. Paul and I had always acknowledged our unique connection through genocide, and we thought that this would be an interesting and unique advantage for our guests coming to Rwanda. Paul was a returnee to Rwanda from Uganda, so he came with a knowledge of what Rwanda needed. As an expat, I had an idea of what some of the tourists might like. We thought this was a match made in heaven. Back in Seattle, the boys were in high school, and I had finished my bachelor's degree. And for the first time in my life, I was loving being a student. I found a master's program that allowed me to graduate within days of the boys graduating from high school. So I enrolled in this program for creative change. We didn't have to do a thesis. We had to create a change project. My change project was designing a tour for educators into Rwanda about genocide, reconciliation, and rebuilding. But now I had this funny balance of life between Rwanda and Seattle. I had one kid at home with the dog and one kid in college in Chicago. And I had this feeling of always being home and never being home. Rwanda is about 24 hours and 8,000 miles from Seattle, one way. So the struggle to stay connected, especially to home, was hard. I decided to start writing for about a year what I called my Thursday Note. It was essentially an open diary, unedited, of what was going on and how we were managing. I used WhatsApp and Facebook a lot. I know that time and distance is a strain on our relationships. And I know we all know we're busy. And that has become a kind of a bone of contention for me, because we all make time for what we feel is important and for who is important. But in the connection world, my online community has helped. I used Facebook and photography groups. And through that, I found that my letters weren't as interesting as my images. And that has given me a whole different set of satisfaction. I've also found Rwanda to be what I've called Jewishly lonely. Because of the large mission community, it's been an awkward place for me to feel like I fit in. So I had left Seattle very much participating in my synagogue. I had taught Sunday school, gone to Shabbat, and I had recently even had my own adult bat mitzvah, like I needed one more thing to do, but I did. And I missed that sense of connection and tradition. So my remedy was to start a Facebook page called Jewish in Rwanda, seeking either people traveling through Rwanda or expats living in Rwanda that were also Jewishly lonely. The ebb and flow of our community, it shrinks and grows, people come and go, but 2 years ago, we were able to host a community of 15 to 22 Jews for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Purim, and Passover. It was a unique community from 7 countries, 5 or 6 states, Jews of different kinds of observation, dietary restrictions, and knowledge. But it didn't matter to anybody because we were together and we had formed dominion. And for 1 year, I wasn't Jewishly lonely. Then in 2013, Paul and I were finally able to get married. It was a crazy weekend where Hanukkah and Thanksgiving had this collide together. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event. We melded our lives together under the chuppah, the Jewish wedding canopy, where I took all the fabrics I had collected from Rwanda and I created and designed our own wedding canopy, one that talked about our travel, migration, and community. We even designed our wedding cake to look like African fabric with safari animals on it. It was an incredible day of friends and family connecting traditions and love together. As I reflect back on these last 12 years, who would ever imagine that a 5th grade homework project could do this much for the mom? It has brought me to realize the connections of my friends, family, faith, photography, learning, and love. The biggest connection was the connection I've been able to make for myself to find something that truly I'm engaged in. I know I am living a crazy lucky life right now, being able to commute back and forth. We say, what do you want to do this weekend? Oh, let's go look at giraffes. Some days, it's so incredible, I look in the mirror and I say, do you know you live in Rwanda? How did you get here? And then I have to pinch myself. So, in conclusion, my suggestion is that the next time you ask someone what they have for homework tonight, never underestimate the power of a 5th grade homework assignment. It might just have you diving into the deep end of the pool, too. Thank you.